I have a lot of cardboard lying around. I should make some art with it. What should I use as inspiration? Something new and trendy, maybe? Stickman Western game from 2017. Hi there, I'm Alex and I do arty things. Let me take you back to Christmas of 2023, when after all the gifts were unwrapped, I looked down at the Amazon boxes in my hand and said, I could make art with that. So my go-to medium is digital art and markers, followed by crayons and pencil. That's why when I suddenly had the inspiration to make 3D art with cardboard and acrylic paint of stickmen, something's a little different today and I'm not complaining. And whatever it is, I don't want to pass up this moment. So with that all being said, let's dive straight into it. Knowing that I wanted something West of Loathing themed, I brought out my sketchbook to put all my ideas in one place and practice sketching the characters. The references of the female protagonist option were few and far between, so to get started I sketched the male protagonist with the classic white cowboy hat. The plan was to connect two pieces of cardboard at the base to make a background and ground piece. On that would be characters and props from the game placed to look like the fight scenes. And while I didn't end up using every idea, I was thankful throughout the entire process that I took the extra time to make this reference. I quickly found which of the Amazon boxes and what part would be the best background and ground piece. It was at this point the realization that my X-Acto knife and good pair of scissors were at my parents' house, making this entire part of the process a pain in my right hand. I ended up getting a bruise on my palm by the end of this. Back on track, the original pieces cut were too vertical, so I taped and glued another cardboard piece on the side of both and achieved the length I needed. I applied 2 or 3 coats of white paint to fully cover the brown and other colors on the leftover tape. The paint was chunky, and since this was supposed to imitate a 2D game in 3D, I had to fish out all the little chunks. I freehanded the sketch for the mountains, doing my best to keep the original proportions as accurate as possible. Oh, now this part may get a little confusing, so hang with me. I mixed up a light gray for the mountains. Afraid of it being too light, I accidentally made it too dark. However, I thought this gray would be perfect for the darker of the grays. So I made a new light gray, which was spot on, so I covered the original gray. The ground gray ended up being too light, so I went over that again after mixing in more black paint. I added in the cacti with the same gray as the ground and went back and forth laying the paint and cleaning the edges. The ground in West of Loathing has a random speckled dot pattern. I used the back of a brush to create those dots. These ended up not being uniform like in the game, however, in my opinion, it does add just a little interest. Once the background and ground piece were complete, the last step was to create the clouds. I used a tissue box and drew the clouds on. I thought I might have been able to stick cardboard behind them when I glued them down to create a 3D effect, but it would have felt out of place due to nothing else in the background being 3D. I sketched those out, painted them white, outlined them with a brush, and stuck them on the background with Elmer's glue. Since I liked how easy the tissue box was to paint, sketch, and most importantly cut out, this made it the perfect candidate for all the characters and props. Most of the references I found for the female protagonist had her wearing other hats, so I pieced together what I could. I posed her in a punching position because on every run of the game, I always play a cowpuncher due to just how much fun and damage I can deal. The reason I was bent on the female protagonist was purely because of nostalgia. My older brother was the one who introduced me and my siblings to the game. Our first character was named Gladys Pretty Silly. I've played the exact same character ever since. I filled her with white paint and added a white paint outline around her so that she'd be more sturdy when I cut her out. Then for line art, I used a black Posca paint pen and filled any areas that needed it. The Posca paint pen was super useful in keeping the lines consistent. Next up was our sidekick Susie. Out of all the possible sidekicks, Susie is my favorite and the only sidekick I've ever completed the game with. I love how much damage she does in a single shot, often one-shotting or finishing off enemies in a single turn. In her pose, I wanted to highlight her shotgun and continue the action-based theme. Sketching was good, line art made it better, filled her in and outlined with white paint, added the Posca liner, and then used a white Posca paint pen to add highlights in her hair. I cut both characters out, being careful to make that sturdy white outline around the characters. This is the point my hand was yelling at me the most to take a break, and I had a noticeable bruise, but hey, here they are! For the props, I used a hellcalf, ungulith, cactus bill, and a random cactus. Same routine, sketched, painted white, Posca line art, and then cut them all out. With the white paint and line art, I had a little trouble keeping the lines consistent with the white paint shapes, but I figured I could cut those parts out at the end, which did work. I tossed Cactus Bill into the mix as a fun reference and to place one more character into the scene without taking attention away from the heroes and villains. And I like Cactus Bill. He's a chill guy, cactus man. Now in the game, the running joke is that everything was fine till the cows came home. It's a simple joke, but they were able to be so creative and clever with it. The cows still are some of my favorite bad guys. They match the aesthetic and bring energy to the silly plot, and were worked well into the Western theme. In retrospect, I'm a little sad I wasn't able to include a goblin or skeleton, or even one of those gross spittoons, or a horse. There's a lot of things I'd like to recreate from the game. As expected, cutting these props out took the longest due to all the curves and tiny little details and corners. The spines on the cacti all disappeared after cutting them out. Little disappointed about that, however, it's not too noticeable, and a few survived. I also included a few more props to add more life to the scene and fill spaces. I made a rock pile, another cactus, and another cactus, cut them all out, and added them to the growing pile of tissue box. I coated the entire background, ground, characters, and props in clear Liquitex gloss varnish. Then I used tape on the back pieces to hold them together while I added hot glue to secure them. I, being a dum-dum, was trying to get into the tight corner with the hot glue gun stand up. Next problem was figuring out how to stand GLaDOS up while gluing her down. I came up with the idea to glue small cutout cardboard pieces to the back of everyone's bases and backs to provide more stability. This worked incredibly well. I placed Susie behind GLaDOS, placed the hellcalf directly opposite to GLaDOS, and the ungulith to Susie. Then one of the random background cacti, and the man cacti himself, Cactus Bill. Placed another cactus behind Susie for visual balance, and the rocks in the middle of the piece and middle of the background and foreground to provide a small visual breakup and to fill in space. Placed the grass in front of Susie and the last cactus to fill the empty space on the left and right.